better future, and we need to start right now. We're on a planet that has a problem. We've got to solve it, get involved and do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future, and we need to start right now. Make it greener, make it cleaner, make it last, make it fast. Do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future, and we need to start right now. No point in waiting or hesitating. We must get wise, take no more lies, and do it now, now, now. We need to build a better future, and we need to start right now. We need to build a better future, and we need to start right now.
Shanti is going to be celebrating her birthday. She's already started, but April 27th is her birthday. So happy birthday to you, Shanti. Thank you so much. And now Jeeva, please kindly introduce them.
I felt like dancing there for a moment. It was really good. So happy to welcome you all. And in the spirit of yes, we have two honored guests to come and assist us in our development of our exercising our spirit and our actions and bringing renewables in to our community, and to take a stand to help promote the renewables instead of carbon-based fuels. So we've got two people that have come to assist us in this. Bill Huston is a computer tech and a systems administrator by trade, but more than that, his inspiration for all of us is his passion to find out about this carbon-based energy and then let us know why we should get out of it and where we can go to get out of it and what has been done for us to free ourselves from this. So Bill's going to come and tell us some very positive stories. He's been in public access TV since 1994, and he's crewed on a live music program in Austin, Texas. There must be some good stories there. He's now part of the all-volunteer Shaleshock Media. Is that the name? And he's working nearly full-time researching and documenting the shale gas invasion of our country and our area over the last 4 years. And we know how, Dayananda and I know how they can become a full-time effort so easily. With a strong background in science and law, Bill does independent research on topics related to energy and environment, and he writes his own personal blog. He's an educated layperson. He started researching and mapping compressor stations and pipelines in 2012, and he's also an intervener in several active FERC dockets, as Yogaville intends to be as well. So that's Bill. Now, before we get to Bill, let me introduce Nadia, and then we'll have the presentations. Nadia Steinzor, she joined Earthworks in 2010. She's worked for over 15 years in communications, writing, editing, research on environmental and social issues for progressive nonprofit organizations, and has held positions at Zero Population Growth, the International Center for Research on Women, and most recently as Director of Communications at the Mohonk Preserve. Nadia has worked to promote action and policies on land and natural resource protection, endangered species policy and recovery, the impacts of population growth and international human rights. And as a volunteer, she has served on the executive committee of the Washington, D.C. chapter of the Sierra Club and is currently a board member of the Woodstock Land Conservancy. Nadia holds an MS in Environmental Policy from Bard College, an MA in Peace and Development Studies, and a BA in International Relations from the University of Gothenburg, Sweden. She lives in Willow, New York, in the Eastern Catskills. So let me please introduce Nadia, and thank you for coming.
I guess I should use this. Oh, I love this step. And I have to say, this is, told a couple of people already, this is the first time I've ever given a PowerPoint without shoes on. So I hope I'll seem more relaxed than I might otherwise. Oh, is it on? Or do I have to just? It's warming up. Oh, it's warming up. Okay.
You just went to your second slide.
Oh.
You're back. Okay.
Seem too relaxed. I don't know how to operate technology.
This is where you tell a shale gas joke.
Oh, shale gas. Ooh, that's hard. I should have one. Do you have one? A good one?
We have so much oil and gas from shale harvest that we have a huge surplus. Therefore, we don't need this pipeline.
Is that a joke? Well, maybe I'll just start by just saying a few words about Earthworks. We are a nonprofit organization. We're kind of small. We're about 15 people based all over the country, and I live in New York. We have an office in Washington, D.C., and also out in Colorado, working on oil and gas. And our primary mission is to work directly with what we call frontline communities, impacted communities, people in the path of development. And more, I mean, historically, we've been around about 25 years, and we've always worked mostly with oil and gas production communities. But more and more, as shale development, both oil and gas, has expanded, pipelines and other infrastructure like compressor stations, processing facilities, have all come into play as a really big deal. And even in states that are not facing production, like Virginia or New York just decided, everybody's part of the same. I mean, that's the good news. Everybody's unified by both the concerns around this development and by the fact that these are networks stretching all over that are interconnecting our areas. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got here and also some of the major concerns around health and the environment. And those who were over at Union Hill, bear with me while I repeat myself a little from this afternoon. But I always like to start with the big picture, which is what's going on in the planet, and maybe Shanti's song summed it up. But basically, there's a huge timing mismatch going on. The oil and gas industry doesn't plan out or let communities know what its whole plan is right from the get-go. So we've started having a massive increase in U.S. oil and gas production in recent years, but they didn't exactly think ahead about how, or maybe they thought ahead, but they didn't tell anyone what they were thinking about how they're going to get it to market. And the east coast of the U.S. is a major market for gas being produced in the Marcellus region, which is Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, and some other states, as well as a major gas consumer. So there's a lot of gas and oil being brought from the west here too. So the shale rush was really underway before a lot of the science and discussion and policies around its impacts were understood. And then we're just getting this proliferation of pipelines, which I call the cart before the horse. You know, let's just produce and produce and produce, and then start the conversation with communities about putting in all these pipelines. But now we've really got to get them in fast, and you all better just accept them because we have to get the gas to market, and you're all consumers. Who's heard that? How did you get here? What do you burn in your house?
Stop the exportation of natural gas.
All right,
That's our goal.
Right. That's a big issue. The other thing that's happened is with all of the development in the Marcellus Shale region, all this oil and gas development has moved closer to home and closer to big population centers. So the good news about that is there are a lot more people like yourselves getting involved because it's coming close to the places you know and love. There have been a lot of people out west and in a lot of communities in the south too that have been hard hit by domestic oil and gas production for decades. just ask anyone in New Mexico or Colorado, lots of tribal communities. They've been dealing with this for a long time, paying the price for a long time. But now we're all facing it. And then, and this goes back to Shanti's song, we're living already in a dirty world, and so it's really making a lot of people question, do we want more oil and gas development on top of our already stressed environment? And maybe there's a different path. And then on top of that, again, is the bigger picture, which is really the entire planet and the atmosphere swirling around it, which is climate change. And can we afford to put more methane into the atmosphere, with methane being such a potent greenhouse gas? So this is just a slide to emphasize that you are not alone, and many of you are very connected to other communities and other places. On the left is the U.S. Energy and Information Administration's map of gas pipelines, the pipeline infrastructure in the U.S. Some of these are really old, some are fairly new. There are a lot more big projects being planned. The kinds of pipeline project, the one that you're facing with the Atlantic Coast Project and many of the others being permitted now, are not your grandparents' pipelines. They are way bigger. They will require big industrial facilities, and it's really important that local officials and community activists understand, don't just accept what they might hear back, which is, well, there's a pipeline over here and a pipeline over there, and what's the big deal? And we're going to talk more about how it's different. But there's already a huge pipeline infrastructure in the U.S. And on the right is the map of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline that's coming through, including where you are now. You are here. It stretches from, it's a 550-mile pipeline from Harrison County, West Virginia, all the way down to North Carolina. With a few compressor stations being planned along the way, including right here in Buckingham. Will probably require more compressor stations over time if they are going to push through the volume of gas that they're projecting, that they're using as a justification for this project. I find it hard to imagine that they'll only need 3 compressor stations if, and let's keep in mind if, they actually get the capacity going. So a huge problem here in dealing with impacts is who bears the burden of proof. Are folks familiar with the precautionary principle concept? It's very common in public health and very common in environmental work. And it basically says if you don't know for sure that it can't be done safely without harming people in the environment, maybe you shouldn't do it. Take a precautionary approach. So the problem we're facing now with the Atlantic Coast Project, all the other pipeline projects, as well as oil and gas production, is it often falls on communities like yours to prove that it's harmful. And it's kind of backwards, right? You have this company coming in, they're proposing a project. Shouldn't they bear the burden of proof that it's not going to harm you, that it's not going to diminish your way of life, your air quality, all the things that you hold dear and sacred, as opposed to all of us scrambling, all the academics scrambling, and believe me, we are all scrambling, and you are scrambling. If you're not, I hope you will be after tonight. Everybody's going to be scrambling to build a case of why this should either be stopped or you should have way better protections and things shouldn't be done just as they are proposing them. So that's the burden of proof. So I just want to quickly say where we're at with understanding the health impacts, which I know you're all concerned about. We know a lot about the substances that come out of oil and gas production and compressor stations. We know, we can identify which chemicals there are. There's a lot we don't know, but they're some of them are fairly common pollutants. But what we don't know is, as well, and where the research is just beginning to emerge, is how you connect your health problem with the source. And that's where the industry always trips us up. Even those of us, like Earthworks and many academic institutions and other organizations that have done a lot of research that build a really strong case for why people are sick because of the compressor stations or the oil and gas production, they'll say you can't prove that it came from here to there. And I'm sorry to use a smoking analogy, but it was the same argument by the tobacco industry. And if you can't prove that the cigarette that Joe smoked on May 12th is the one that gave him lung cancer, then you don't have a case. And that's just the dire truth of where we're at in arguing about these issues. But there's a growing body of evidence that helps us with that, and that's really exciting. We also have really limited standards for exposure. So our safety levels tend to be based on chronic exposure for workers over an 8-hour period. But what would it mean to have a compressor station in your backyard or leaks from a pipeline 24/7 over a long period of time, even if, as the industry will claim, it's low levels of emissions? That's a different exposure. We also don't have enough testing. Have you ever heard of an air monitor out here, a state air monitor? That's because most monitoring for air quality is done in urban areas. So we're facing a really different situation now and a really different animal, and that's something we all need to make clear to the officials as well. We're also not very good on a policy level with all of this development at figuring out what's called cumulative impacts. You know, it's one thing to have one compressor here, one pipeline there, a few oil and gas wells over 100 miles away. What happens if it all gets built in over time? Isn't that a bigger impact? It's like with stress, right? You can deal with one stress in your life, then you add another, and you add a third. Now you've got to do something about it. So it's the same thing when you're evaluating air quality or water contamination. You reach a tipping point. And that's not, has Dominion ever said, for example, I would challenge them to say the effects of this compressor combined with the effects of the other two compressors is going to be this. They'll only talk about one at a time. And that is something that, and Bill will get more into this with the FERC process, that we have to make regulators do. Come clean about the total impacts.
Can you just, that last slide that you had, is that an actual pipeline outside of the ground?
Yeah, that's an above-ground pipeline in Pennsylvania. It's much smaller dimension than what you're getting. I like this photo because of the cattle grazing nearby. So when these pipeline cuts occur, and the Atlantic Coast pipeline would be underground, but the companies have to keep the pipeline corridors clear of vegetation. So grass may grow up over it, but you'll never see trees and vegetation on it again. Bushes and things on it again. So those are clear forever until the pipeline goes defunct.
Well, one just
So.
blew up day before yesterday.
Right,
It's
right.
probably still hot.
Right,
And it had a forest fire of 300 acres.
right.
Decimated.
Yeah.
Everything. No bugs, no hummingbirds,
There's a lot more
no air.
pipelines and gas
It
lines
blew up.
blowing up and having problems. Part of that is the nation's aging infrastructure. I think it's about half of the
This was
pipelines in the
recovered
country.
bullets from a
Yeah,
local.
the one in Fresno is what you're talking about.
The backhoe hit the pipeline, and there was casualty. A lot of casualty human.
So, yeah, not good stuff. So, again, you're not alone, and while we all need to fight for the places we love and know best, when it comes to the strategies around this and connecting, obviously there's a lot of other communities right around here and also across the region and the nation working on exactly the same things, asking exactly the same questions. Why here? Why now? Why us?
For the exportation of natural gas. We gotta stop that.
Pardon me, sir, can we just listen? She's the speaker. Thank you.
So
Maybe.
everyone has some shared concerns and strategies, and I'll just put these out here because we're going to get more into it, and I'm sure all of you will be pursuing all this more. The most important thing is to raise your local voices and to be heard and to participate, and whether you're coming from this perspective of justice or caring for the air around you or just not wanting the land to be disturbed, whatever your point of entry is, it's really important for companies and the policy process to hear from you. And it's a critical question around ethics and justice, that those who are most affected by something should be heard. So that's a common theme among all these pipeline fighting communities. The most important thing for a lot of communities is to prevent the health and environmental impacts, noise, light, and air pollution, any damage to their environment and wildlife habitat. Landowner rights is a big one. Is everybody hearing about that around here? Right? Not, I don't want you on my land to survey, and I don't particularly want a pipeline cut through my property. That's a big issue. There's a big knot of regulation to wade through, and it's often maddening and confusing, but I think all of us together are figuring it out over time, and Bill's going to help us with that. And that's on the local, state, and federal level. And then the bigger question is just changing our energy direction. You know, a lot of people are saying, you know, why are we putting in pipelines that are going to take 3 years to scope and permit, 3 more years to build, at the capacity that the company is saying we need them, like these 42-inch pipeline. I'm doing this, I don't even know if that's 42 inches, but it's big. You know, that they're expecting that to have gas flowing through that for decades. Maybe it's high time that we just change energy direction and leapfrog over all this infrastructure. Okay, so I should have put that first with that kind of applause, but that's a major question that a lot of communities are asking, like, why bother? So compressor stations, because you will be getting one here in neighboring Buckingham, I just want to point out here, they are polluting industrial facilities. They're not just little engines purring along. This is the picture here above is a compressor. This is the same compressor station. I'll explain why the pictures look so funky and different. The top one, this is a Spring Hill compressor in Pennsylvania, Fayette County near the West Virginia border, just last week. So the top one is just a photo with a regular digital camera. 30 seconds later, a minute later, I took the above photo. My colleague pulls out an infrared camera, which detects heat and polluting emissions. So this is not at night, it's the same time. And so to the naked eye, it looks like what's above. You put the infrared camera on, everything that's hot white there is heat. Everything above that, all the smoke, is volatile organic compounds, otherwise known as air pollution. And this is a compressor where people have been complaining for years and years about odors, health impacts, my asthma's worse, my kid has nosebleeds, what's going on, and they always point to it and say it's pretty clean. So we're working now, as well as other folks, great guy in Pennsylvania named Frank Finnan, another organization out in Texas named Shale Test. We all have FLIR cameras, and we're all trying to document the fact that these aren't clean. We also need air testing to identify the pollutants and more monitoring to hold the companies accountable. But this is the kind of thing that we hope will be useful to you if the company ever comes back and says, oh, this is going to be totally clean and harmless. So there's a lot of sources. Bill's going to go into it more of where the emissions can come from. The volatile organic compounds, and the statements here are based on Earthworks research. I have some summaries of the research study we did on the back table, as well as many other studies that have been done that clearly associate volatile organic compounds coming from compressor stations and other facilities being linked with headaches, dizziness, sinus problems, eye, nose, and throat irritation, fatigue, and aches and pains, and those are just the top symptoms. Nitrogen oxide, which is a common pollutant from an industrial source like a compressor, and volatile organic compounds can combine with sunlight and form ground-level ozone, which obviously is not good. We get it a lot in urban areas from traffic and industrial areas from a variety of sources. But it's known to have impacts on lung function, respiratory, and cardiovascular systems, which there are just way too many patterns in these symptoms. I can't go into it all tonight, but there are multiple studies in different parts of a state. We looked at the whole of Pennsylvania, lots of studies from other states, and they're all showing the similar patterns of symptoms among people living near these facilities. And compressor stations are among the top emitters of air pollutants in Pennsylvania counties right now. It's really changed rapidly over the years. And often they're located in communities like where we are today, rural, residential communities. There's not a lot of other sources around. And so they end up being really high polluters for their areas. So then the ethical question here is who bears the risk, who pays the price, or as we were saying earlier, who bears the burden of proof and who has to shoulder the costs. So that's Aubrey McClendon. I should probably change it I should have changed it to the Dominion CEO. But that's Aubrey McClendon. He's the CEO of Chesapeake Energy. And he's pretty happy about
inmate.
everything. What?
Inmate, he's under indictment.
Yeah, he's under indictment now. Whether you're a worker desperate for a job, and we can't deny the need for jobs in our communities, you're going to have a different perception of what risk you're willing to take, even on the well site, because workers bear some of the worst health impacts and safety impacts of anyone. Pam Judy there on the bottom, that's a compressor station about 900 feet from her home, and she and her family have been doing a lot to get better, because the thing was already built. They couldn't do anything about it, unlike when they come into new communities, you can actually mobilize. And she worked really hard for many, many years to get better pollution controls and reduce the emissions, but she and her family nonetheless continue to have health impacts. Terry Greenwood, rancher in Pennsylvania, he lost cattle. So, everybody's going to have a different perception of where they're at depending on if they feel empowered, if they have any control over the situation. And the upper picture are a group of indigenous activists fighting the Keystone XL pipeline. And so they're really coming together over broader values and unity among indigenous people. So I'm going to end here a little bit with what we and many other organizations and activists think needs to be done at this point to move the debate forward. And I talked about the growing body of evidence and bearing the burden of proof. There's a great organization, and if you guys want to look it up, Physicians, Scientists, and Engineers for Healthy Energy. Larissa Durska is part of that. And they did an analysis last year of all the scientific literature on shale gas and oil development. And what they came up with was that if you looked at the original research on water quality, 72% of the studies indicate a potential risks of adverse health outcomes. Only 28% of them did not. When it comes to air quality over on the right, 95% of the studies, and this is among a few hundred peer-reviewed studies, 95% indicated that there would be adverse health outcomes. And health overall, kind of looking at the whole suite of problems from the moment the drill bit goes in the ground to produce the gas or oil to all the way downstream to pipelines and compressor stations, just everything that could impact health. 96% of the studies showed a link or were able to demonstrate that there could be potential adverse health outcomes. So the question that I think a lot of communities are asking now, in addition to why bother, and do we really need this infrastructure in our midst, is, isn't there enough evidence by now? And at what point is the consistency in the body of evidence show clear enough trends that our policymakers and our elected officials will listen and say, and listen to you if you say we don't think it's worth the risk, if that's what you conclude. So I would encourage you all to look at PSE's information, and they have some really good statistics that on health studies and other aspects like economics and jobs that could be really useful in your campaigns. So what we really need to happen is have a clearer focus on risks. I'm almost done. Clearer focus on risks rather than just saying, prove to us that you're going to get sick. If there's a big risk of you getting sick, maybe the action shouldn't be taken. Once again, precautionary principle. Uncertainty is no excuse for inaction. And that's what I would say to policymakers. Just because you can't be sure that this is going to harm our community, you're really not going to hedge your bets and do a better job of protecting us. We need to consider all the cumulative and additive effects. Do you really want this in your midst, given everything else happening with our planet? We've talked about shifting the burden of proof. Public health and health impacts really need to be given more weight in decision-making. They very seldom come up in the permitting process or in the scoping unless people force it to be included. It's an uphill battle, but it's one that we're making some strides on because of all the research. So again, I encourage you to use that argument. And we need to listen to the residents because you're the ones who are directly in the pathway. And then once frontline communities are affected, their needs have to be considered. Problems should be investigated. We need a lot more publicity and reporting on all of these issues. And we need to provide direct help and resources to communities. So this is all a way of saying, just to end, you're not alone. Everybody will work with you. I hope you all come to work together. And while the news is not happy, there is a lot of change happening in this movement now. And it's because communities have come together. We are now having a debate over shale gas and oil development that did not exist even a few years ago. And that is success. It's small comfort to people who are negatively impacted, but they are part of the change that we're all working toward. And so delay is a success, organizing is a success, and it's all coming together, and we're going to keep pushing it in that direction. So thank you very much. Oh, there was are we taking questions now, or do you want to do it after?
We were thinking of doing it after that both of you are
Okay.
done, but Nadia, if you do.
You have it's just he had his hand raised
Sure.
for a while.
Make
Yeah,
it
I'm sorry.
quick. Thank you. As a fellow public health professional and former NIH researcher in the tobacco control research groups there, thank you for making the parallel to the challenge that happened with the tobacco control movement. My question is, do you have advice on how we can channel the rightful anger against when the system breaks down? You know, it's supposed to be you show the research and then the federal regulatory agency makes a policy decision based on that. And in this case, there's industry-sponsored obstacles. How would you recommend that we as a community balance our energy towards more research versus what was ultimately effective in the tobacco control movement, which was social media?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think Bill's going to get into that too. Oh, the mic. Well, Bill's going to get into that too about all the different ways to get involved. I think activists ultimately need to focus, whether you want to call yourself an activist, active citizens, concerned citizens, need to find the way to be active that's comfortable for you. So if you really want to work on research and getting out information, building incredible arguments, great. But I agree. I mean, it's a great point you're making that we can have all the evidence in the world and it doesn't necessarily change things. So there's a huge need to shift public opinion. And the way you're going to do that is through social media and in public information. But I think before you feel comfortable going out doing that, you have to have that knowledge. So I think it cuts both ways. But there's nothing more frustrating than having policymakers say, show me the evidence, show me the science, and then everybody scrambles, as I was saying, and pulls it together, and 8 years into this boom, we now have this great body of science, and it's increasing all the time, and then they're like, oh, well, that's not enough. That's really not cutting it. That's not the data I was looking for. So, yeah, and that's where, like you said, channeling the rightful anger, and I think Bill's going to talk more about all of these ways to get involved and do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's much better. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's a great honor. What a beautiful place you have here, and it's just the hospitality that I've received. It's just, I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for inviting me. So let's see. That's not exactly the title of my talk, because I'm really it's been under evolution. I think I'm going to, there's my contact info if you want to jot that down, and I'm happy to answer questions later. And I'll make the PowerPoint available so you can review it later. I think I'm going to bypass, just in the interest of time, I'm not going to play the videos that I have that some of you might have seen if you attended earlier today in the town of Buckingham. But I'll send links out to them. It's basically just compressor station, crap, blowdowns and explosions and things like that. So, there's plenty of that out there for you to see. And that's, once again, this summary is not exactly what I'm going to get into in the talk today, but the high-level summary is that compressor stations and pipelines have grave consequences to our environment and to public health. And in the past, it's been almost impossible to stop these projects. That's just the reality of the situation where we're in. But I don't let that stop you from getting involved, because what I see is we have a massive social movement going on right now, and there are groups getting organized across multiple state boundaries, and environmentalists coming together with Tea Party conservatives. If who would have imagined that, right? Because they're interested in property rights. So I'm very optimistic. And then we also have, we're going to get into basically, we're at a point where all administrative remedies have failed. We have tried lawsuits, we've engaged in the process, administrative remedies have failed. And what do people living in a democracy do? Do you just sit back and just take the abuse? What do? You get into the streets, and we're very lucky to have a person here from the Beyond Extreme Energy movement that they've been disrupting FERC meetings, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and last year they did a blockade of the building for a week and didn't allow the people to get in to do their rubber stamping. And it's going to happen again at the end of May. So I've been through the whole regulatory system, and I've seen it fail. So I'm really excited about the Beyond Extreme Energy movement, because it reminds me of the other social movements throughout history where the change happened when people got into the streets. And that's where I think we're at with this fossil fuel infrastructure. That's the bottom line of my talk. I was very inspired by the quote out there in the dining hall. If you have complete faith, anything is possible. So I'm very optimistic that we can stop this thing. The two main things I want to focus on, I'm just going to scan really quickly through compressor stations and pipeline stuff, because with the point that Swami has asked me to really concentrate on are two topic areas. One is, what can we do to stop this thing? And the second one is, what are some success stories? Have there been any success stories? What might they be? So I'm going to blast through this first section here and skip a lot of stuff. Compressor station design, it's just, do you really want to know how the machine that's going to destroy your life, what it looks like? So all of these wavy lines are basically emitters of air pollution. They're potential emitters or certain emitters of. This is kind of a typical schematic design of a compressor station. This is the overall gas distribution network from. I'm going to kind of maybe stand this way a little bit. Am I going to mess up the camera guy at all?
You can move the,
Just let go of the microphone.
it's movable,
I'll take care of
podium.
it. It'll pick you up.
It'll pick me up?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So
Don't handle the microphone.
don't handle it. I'm not going to touch it. So here's the production areas in West Virginia, Southwest PA, and Northeast PA. This is the big distribution line. This is the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, or this is what the Dominion wants the Atlantic Coast Pipeline to be. And then this is the local distribution networks right here. This is the gas that goes to the factories and to your homes here. This is a high pressure system, and this is a low pressure system. And all along here, as Nadia said, there's going to be compressor stations all along this thing. This is one of the more common designs for very large compressors. It's a centrifugal. It's almost like a jet engine. So this is like what they really look like. That's really a jet engine. There's the exhaust for it, and then over here is the actual compressor, the pump for it, which is what we just looked at. This is a compressor in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. It's a really massive facility. It's hard to tell how big it is looking at pictures from the air, but it's, if you try to locate maybe a truck, that's a big truck. That's kind of a big crane of some kind. This is probably, I'm guessing that's about 30 acres, but it's constantly being expanded. There's another view. This is this is about 1 year later. My friend Vera Scroggins took an airplane ride and took this photograph. And let's get a closer look of some of where these emitters are. We've got engine exhaust. We've got these glycol dehydrators here. The reboilers are emitters. There's flares. There's storage tanks that leak, crap. And we think that stuff is getting collected during the day and flared at night. And they do have some air quality meters in Susquehanna County that are looking at exactly what that stuff is. This is a compressor in Windsor, New York. This is about 15,000 horsepower. So this is about half the size of the one that's proposed for near here. This is a family that used to live near that compressor station, and if you notice who bought the property, Williams Field Services, because they couldn't meet the noise ordinance, and this family was getting sick, and they couldn't sleep at night, and they were having headaches and nosebleeds. So Williams came along and said, we're going to buy out your house, sign here, and you're going to be silent for the rest of your life. You're not going to talk about this, and we're going to buy out your house, and you're going to be happy, and you're going to get out of here. So the house has become abandoned. There's the abandoned house. It's now owned by, it's now an office. I like to point this out to people. That's where the kids used to play. And then this is some complaints. I'm going to skip through this stuff. Oh, here's one of my favorites. 200 blowdowns, more than 200 blowdowns in a single year. That's for one compressor. The blowdowns are very loud. I play that for you. I like to have fun sometimes, so this is I've created this, it's an MLS, like multiple listing service. I call it the MLS from hell. So this is, I use real photographs from these, these pipeline reps. This guy, Mike, I know this is great. So just call Mike, 1-800-LIVE-IN-HELL. This house is not for sale at any price because it's abandoned. You can't live here. 30,000 horsepower. There's a way to visualize 30,000 horsepower. 7 big locomotives. Just think of the rumbling when these trains go by. 2 of these will pull a train a mile long. That's a lot of power. You've seen that before. That's kind of the route. This is kind of interesting. I was wondering, what the heck? Why is the route shaped that way? Well, look right here. North Carolina, they got this shale basin right here that they want to tap, this little green area. So one reason for this transmission line being here, I think they're getting gas from here, they want to get gas from here, and they want to take it here. Wonder why? What do they want to do here? Maybe LNG export? Maybe. There's some pipelines in Virginia, a little obsolete. This is some showing other pipelines in the area. Why did I put a red? Anybody that was there during the presentation this morning, don't say why. But somebody else answer me. Why is that red dot there? What red star? What's that?
Kaboom.
Huh?
A kaboom.
A kaboom? What town is that?
Appomattox.
Appomattox. And what happened there in 2007? It blew up. This is the Transco pipeline. Kablamo. And I don't even think they know why this wasn't hit by a line. It just randomly exploded, I think. It was like corrosion. Corroded lines. Two homes were destroyed. 5 people went to the hospital. That's some pipelines in the northeast, but, the one thing I want to show you here is that, the pipelines, everybody's talking about exports via Cove Point, which is down here somewhere. We've also got export routes into Canada, and one of the reasons for that is, there's export terminals. These are potential export terminals. Not all of them are on here. One of the reasons for the export into Canada is to support tar sands development. So that's where some of this gas is going, up into Canada. That's why pipelines are going that way. That's the Dominion, the existing Dominion route right now. And of course, they want to start here and go. How do we estimate how much pollutants come out of these things? How do we get a handle on this? Well, I've been looking around. I don't know of any. I haven't seen any data. But on a compressor this big, a 30,000 horsepower compressor. But what I have seen is, this is an 11,000, there's three different 11,000 horsepower compressors here. This was one for the presentation that Nadia and I did in Madison County. So 11,000 horsepower, 54,000 tons per year of greenhouse gas emissions. And here's another one in Brookman's Corners. It's a different design. This one's a turbine. This one is a reciprocating piston motor. Look at that, 100,000 tons per year. Just a little bit under. Oh, by the way, 100,000 would be a major source. It would require like a major source permit. So look, it's just a little bit under. What a coincidence.
That's Madison County, New York. We've got a Madison County too.
This is Madison County, New York. Thank you. And so if this is 11,000 horsepower, maybe we can take about 50,000 and multiply it by 3. Let's try that. So 150,000 tons per year. That's my guess for what this compressor is going to put out. 150,000 tons per year. How big is that? Well, a coal car, everybody's seen one of these, that's 100 tons. And a unit train is 100 cars. That's 1 mile long. So do the multiplication. 1 unit train is 10,000 tons. So 150,000 tons is a coal train, 15 miles long. That's what's going into the air every year.
Oh my God.
And that's only from the engine exhaust. That does not include blowdowns. That is a lot of crap into the air. These pipelines also emit low-frequency radiation. It's very hazardous to human health. They call it vibroacoustic disease or gas pipeline syndrome. Stephen Kohlhase is from Connecticut. He's a leading expert on this subject. Sometimes these compressors just blow up. That's the Lathrop compressor in Susquehanna County. That's the Windsor compressor in New York that was struck by lightning. This is Sissonville. This is a 26-inch gas line that just randomly exploded in West Virginia, and it wiped out a 4-lane divided interstate. That's Sissonville. That was just 2 or 3 years ago, pretty recently. That's a chunk of the pipe that blew. They found that about 100 feet away. This is Williams Central Station. I showed you an overhead shot of that. This one blew up. Williams has a real habit of, Dominion is your compressor that wants to build here, but Williams is really one of the worst operators. They really like blowing up compressors. Pipes corrode. It's just a fact of life. They have this thing called cathodic protection, but it doesn't really, This is not going to affect the Dominion. This isn't going to affect a brand new pipeline probably, although a pipeline just recently exploded that had it was due to corrosion, and the pipe was only 1 year old. So this might affect a new pipeline. The only reason this is here is to, PIMSA, which is the federal agency which governs pipeline safety. They have a calculation for coming up with how big the blast area is, and the calculation they use is wrong. I calculate a 42-inch pipeline that's 1,440 psig. The potential blast radius could be 2 miles in diameter. That's the zone of burn zone. We don't have any data because 42 inches, as far as I know, is never blown up. There's the docket number, the FERC docket number. Now we're going to get into FERC, and who's the timekeeper? Like how much time do I have 10 minutes left?
8 minutes.
8 minutes? Okay. So I'm going to try to do 4 minutes on FERC process. Oh, boy, I got 3 sections. Okay. So FERC process, and we got to do...
Stay.
What's that?
We'll stay longer.
FERC process, how can we fight this? How can we stop it? And then the success stories. So maybe I can go over a tiny bit. I'm just worried I'm not going to be able to cover it. Okay, FERC is a rubber stamp machine. Get on YouTube and search for FERC as a rubber stamp machine, and you'll see a video I made. It's kind of cute. This is what FERC does. FERC regulates the transmission and sale of natural gas. For interstate commerce, they approve the siting of interstate natural gas pipelines, and they're chartered to perform environmental review on new projects, but they don't really do a very good job at that. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you might have seen him on the Ed Show talking about the pipeline that's in my backyard, the Constitution Pipeline. He called FERC a rogue agency, and I felt really satisfied because I've been using that phrase in my blog for the last couple of years. It's industry captured. It doesn't follow this nation's laws. I'm just using very blunt language here, but this is a matter of fact. And they're putting many human lives in jeopardy. FERC is funded by the very industry they regulate. They violate the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, a very good environmental law if they would follow it. And they violate the Natural Gas Act routinely. They also violate orders of the federal court. So where's the cops coming to arrest FERC? Well, it's beyond extreme energy. So I'm gonna ask Charles maybe to talk during the Q&A. This is the FERC process. We could really do a weekend workshop on FERC, so I'm really gonna scan through this stuff fast. But basically, FERC does not, if you look at this, FERC isn't following the law. They're not doing it right. This gets into the details. It has to do with the finding of no significant. It doesn't really apply to this pipeline, so I'm just going to skip it for now. This is kind of an overview of the overall FERC process. There's an open season. We're long past that, where the applicant seeks shippers. This is where we are for Dominion Atlantic Coast right now. I think they've already held their open houses. In fact, they've already held their scoping, right? They've already done scoping for the environmental, so this is where we are, actually. Sorry.
Of sorts, yeah.
And then the decision of whether there's going to be an EA. The EA is a fast track. You really want an EIS. So ask for that. Ask for an EIS in your comments because it's going to slow it down. I'm going to skip the EA and concentrate on the EIS because for a pipeline this big, you better get an EIS. There's going to be public hearings after the draft EIS is published. This is after it goes into formal filing. You're not into formal filing yet. You're still in pre-file. Then they're going to issue their final EIS. There's going to be public hearings maybe after that. And then FERC likely going to issue their Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. After that, there's probably a couple of other permits they're going to wait for, and then there's going to be a notice to proceed, and that's when they start cutting trees.
Can you define EIS for us, please? Environmental
Impact Study. It's a much more extensive formal procedure than the EA. The EA is just an environmental assessment, and it's a fast-track procedure. And FERC is using that illegally. NEPA requires, so the environmental law that we have requires the consideration of project alternatives, including the no action alternative. So this is one that they very rarely actually look at, but bug them about that. NEPA requires the analysis of cumulative impacts. Nadia talked about that. Direct and indirect. So a direct impact of a pipeline would be, blasting the rock, might destroy people's foundations, which has actually happened. It happened in Hancock, New York. Reasonable and foreseeable impacts, like, remember Nadia told you that there's likely going to be additional compressor stations. That should be scoped, but it very rarely is. Impacts of connected projects. This Dominion, this ACP project is connected to many other pipelines. So why don't they scope all these together and show us the cumulative impact of all of these pipelines? They're supposed to, but they don't. Upstream impacts of fracking. They say, well, we don't regulate fracking. Well, that's irrelevant, FERC. You're chartered by NEPA to look at these impacts anyway. And downstream impacts, such as radon gas in people's homes. So it's a very good law if they would just follow it. The Natural Gas Act, the way that FERC violates it, it requires all companies to obtain a certificate of necessity for any natural gas project designed for interstate commerce. I'm going to show you a couple. I guess maybe I don't know if I have a picture of that, but those two compressors I showed you from the air, the Williams Central Station and also the Williams Dunbar compressor in Windsor, neither one of those were built with a certificate of public convenience and necessity, due to what I like to call the API loophole. I can get into, ask me that during Q&A if that piques your interest.
Bill?
Yes.
I just want to make sure hope that you're not feeling rushed. So that's what I want to propose to you who are here, so he doesn't have to rush, but Nadia also has to leave them to drive back. So let him, how much more time, just like, how would you like 5 more minutes? So what I think we could do is to let you finish, don't feel rushed.
Okay.
And then for those who wish to stay for question and answer could stay, those who need to go could go. Would that be a solution for this situation? Okay, thank you. Okay,
Thank you, Swami. That helps.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump right into now about what can we do to stop this pipeline. And my friend Claire Donahue likes to say the spaghetti on the wall approach. Try everything. We got to engage this process in every possible way and see what sticks. And I believe really the whole secret is our attitude. If we believe we can stop this, there is a chance. If we feel like this pipeline is inevitable, then it is. Our attitude makes all the difference in the world. In October in Albany, groups from about, I think it was 6 different states in the Northeast all got together to talk about how to fight pipelines. So we're building these broad coalitions, and I encourage you to, I think that's happening here too, a little, we're in the beginning stages, but communicate with your neighbors regionally. Here's some scenarios for a win. What's a win scenario? Well, FERC denies the permit. Well, it's extremely rare, but I'm always hopeful. If we get a delay, the pipeline in my backyard, the Constitution, we've achieved an 18-month delay. So it's been permitted, it hasn't been built yet, so I'm praying every day that some miracle happens and we can kill this thing still, but we've delayed it, so that's a win. The permit is very commonly, some of the wins that we're going to get into in a second, the success stories, the permit is withdrawn by the applicant. This is 10 times more likely than this happening. And then, who knows? I'm not going to try to predict all the different win scenarios. There's miracles that come out of the woodwork all the time.
Yes.
So, success stories, here we go. This is what Swami really wanted me to get into. So what are some success stories? And I just wrote these out like in about half an hour before dinner. So the first one was one we called the I-81 pipeline. This was going to run from Binghamton to Syracuse. It was a 30-inch high-pressure pipeline. It was going to use an existing right-of-way from an abandoned, like a gasoline pipeline. They call it the Sun Pipeline. It had been abandoned for 15 years. But we really, all of these beautiful New York anti-fracking people, these amazing people, we got together, we mobilized fast, we mapped the thing out, we contacted the landowners, we said, deny them access to your land, which is really tricky since there was an existing right-of-way there. But we got mobilized so fast, they went running. They said, we're not going to pursue this. So that was a big success story. Another success story was in Pennsylvania, this one called the Commonwealth Pipeline. 120 miles, 30-inch high-pressure pipeline from Lycoming County in northeast PA to Berks County in southeast PA. There were 2 really strong areas of resistance. One was called Berks Gas Truth, which is our friend Karen Faradin's organization. And this group called Lancaster Against the Pipeline, a very rural area, very similar to this. And they said, well, we're going to withdraw the project because we can't find enough shippers. That's what they said. Okay, we'll take it. It's a win. This was one of my favorites. There was a group in Searsport, Maine. And we're talking about really a rural community, very low population density, right? And this company called DCP Midstream got the idea they were going to make a 22 million gallon tank of liquid propane, 130, like 5 stories high, 200 feet in diameter. The community said, "Ain't no way!" So even though this tank won all kinds of permits from state and federal agencies, it still needed the approval of the Searsport Planning Board. Now, you've probably seen how these Dominion guys come in and get control over the local town boards by some mechanism. I don't know exactly how they do it, but I'm thinking it's like, I don't know, something like this. But the local planning board, it was a multi-year fight, but eventually, and it was like neck and neck, and nobody knew which way it was going to go. Planning board decided 5-0 that the project was not permitted. It was like a zoning thing. They basically zoned it out of existence, and they withdrew the application. So that was a big win. This is really one of my favorites because this community was tiny. So there's the Statue of Liberty, and that would have been the mega tank.
Oh my God.
And there's the beautiful people from Searsport, Maine, and they made a big circle the size of the tank. So this can be done. This can be done, and it doesn't take big. This is the Constitution pipeline in my back. It's 30 miles from my house, but it's the project I've been working on the most because it really impacts my family and my friends directly. 400,000 to 700,000 trees would be destroyed. And if you're ever out in the woods and look at one tree supports 10,000 living things. It's just, when I thought this was going to be permitted in January and February, I cried every day for 6 months because I didn't see a winning scenario. But by some miracle, the grace of God, we've gotten to April 1st deadline where they are legally prohibited from cutting trees. So I think we have the summer. It's just a delay, but it's a win for right now, right? I'll take it. What can we do? Okay, this is the last part. I'm going to wrap it up here. I just got maybe 2 minutes left. We'll blast through this. Deny access to your land. Number one, most important thing, deny access. Don't let them on your land. If you've signed an easement agreement, sign the letter to rescind access. And the Friends of Buckingham have these form letters. You can get it from them. This takes a little explanation, but what I tried to, if we have any computer programmers here, there's a thing called a bootstrap problem, or if you read science fiction in your youth, you might have read Catch-22. There's a Catch-22 that's built into the law that basically says if a large number of landowners deny access, the pipeline cannot be built if FERC follows the law. And let me see if I can explain this. So under the National Environmental Policy Act, FERC cannot issue the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity until all of the environmental review is done. Okay? That makes sense, right? The only thing is, with many holdout landowners, the environmental review cannot proceed without condemnation of the land. That's a legal proceeding. It's part of eminent domain. Okay? And condemnation requires the issue of the certificate. So go back up here. That's a deadlock. You can't break out of that. FERC has devised in their little rubber stampy minds a way to break out of this. And it's highly illegal. There's no basis in law. It's called the conditional permit, where they say, well, we're going to issue this is what they did in the Constitution pipeline case. They said, well, we're just going to issue this thing, and we're going to figure that these other permits are going to come along. When they issue it, that gives the courts the basis of doing eminent domain proceedings, and then they get access to the land to do the surveys. So they have devised this illegal trick to get around this problem, but we still have to keep denying them access. That's the most powerful thing we can do to stop this thing. Petition your local government at all levels. Oh, I know what some people moaned and groaned when I brought this up in Buckingham, but see if you can get them to pass a noise ordinance if you can't get them to pass a resolution opposing it. Noise ordinance will increase costs. Communicate with your state officials. Talk to the DEQ because they have permitting authority over this thing in several different ways. Talk to the governor. Bend the ear. The DEQ works for the governor. Talk to your legislators. There's your representative in the House. There's your senator, your state senator. Make sure that you lose control. Let's communicate with your U.S. congressman, too. Your U.S. congressman, Robert Hurt, your senators, there they are. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, they have Clean Water Act authority as well. Fish and Wildlife will place restrictions on tree cutting. This one probably doesn't apply to you. And then there's FERC. Participate in the scoping. You still have until the 29th, I think, is the end of scoping. And become a FERC intervener. You will never be able to sue FERC but because of whatever consequences, negative consequences that you find, unless you become a FERC intervener. That's a very important thing. You can connect with other groups. Here's some of the groups you can connect to. Beyond Extreme Energy, that's what Charles is from. Friends of Nelson, Waterkeeper Alliance, I think you've got connections to them. Chesapeake Climate Action. Talk to the conservative groups about property rights. Get them on board. You got to get media savvy. Write letters to the editor. Learn how to write press releases to your local media outlets. Call into radio talk shows, print flyers, hand them out everywhere. Farmers markets, church gatherings, put out lawn signs. I see lots of those around. And then when all administrative remedies fail, we got to take it to the streets. End of May, the last week in May, there's going to be a big action at FERC. It's being called Stop the FERCus. And I'm going to say we, because I'm going to be down there in D.C., and we're going to blockade the FERC building again, and many of us are going to get arrested.
Yeah. You
don't have to get arrested, but if you can support this, come to D.C. and support it in any way that you can.
What street?
It's right next to Union Station. You can't miss it. I think it's called Second Avenue, 2nd Street. I'm not sure.
It is.
Across from the IRS.
I don't know about that. And then the last thing you can do is, let's say everything fails and they put in the pipeline anyway. The last possible thing you can do, and I'm not recommending this because it's like, I don't want to focus on this because I want to try to stop it. But if it does get built, you can get the Delaware Riverkeeper Network's Legal Observer Training Kit. And there are instructors that will come down and teach this to you. But basically it's a way to document all of the violations during the tree cutting and the tree clearing. Document all this stuff and they'll get fined and it will cost them a lot of money. And then think about other creative things you can do to disrupt construction. That's Stop the FERCus. Write down this guy's contact info if you want to get involved in the Stop the FERCus last week of May. There's his info, and I'm going to leave the PowerPoint with people here. And there's me. Thank you.
Okay, we want to thank both presenters. That was a great presentation. It really brought together a lot of information that we've been dealing with here so we can understand how to put it together and then take action on it. We're not going to keep everyone any longer. Those that would like to stay for the question and answer, okay, please remain. Should we do a little chant to end, or?
No, I think we can continue.
Okay, so those, please excuse yourselves. Thank you all for coming if you need to leave, but now there's a chance here for questions and answers.
And I'm sorry that we wanted 30 minutes, but I think 15 minutes probably, we hope that'll be enough. Go ahead.
Okay.
If you can field the questions.
Sure.
We don't have a moving mic, so.
Oh, there's one.
They don't? Okay.
Questions?
I don't need a microphone, though.
Well, for the live stream, it'll help for the live stream.
Can everybody, oh, no.
We want to hear your lovely voice.
Well, thank you so much. What an inspiring talk. And we're a part of Friends of Nelson, although we do live just across the river and we can see Yogaville. We don't live here, but so technically we're in Nelson County and we have a farm and tons of animals and people building a community as well. And a compressor station would just destroy our sons' lives and the dream of passing that farm on and all that. So thank you for what you're doing. And I'm wondering if we could get a picture of that infrared shot, because that would be great for us to put on Facebook from your PowerPoint.
Absolutely, and that one and some other footage that we took just last week in Pennsylvania, where we did focus on compressor stations and processing facilities. We will be happy. I could maybe share a variety of them. We're in the process of editing them and putting them together, but we can do more of those sort of side-by-sides. I think what I'd like to do is see if we have any footage of compressor stations that are roughly equivalent to the one being planned here. Because the one I showed you is considerably smaller than what you would have here, and it's still causing emissions. So I'd be delighted to do that. Just give me a few days to get the editor to do it.
Thank you.
Sure.
And just one more thing, please, because this is the first time. I mean, we go to the Friends of Nelson's meeting, but here you have this. The way it was advertised was the success stories, and I think that what we have the potential to do here in this community is to establish, which I'm sure a lot of individual people have been thinking about this. I know we spoke about it, but creating a group visioning meeting where we can get together and create a vibration that this has not happened, that it is in delay, because right now it hasn't happened. So technically, time, space, continuum, it's not happening. And if we create that space vibrationally for that reality to unfold and become, whereas everybody is creating a stressful vibration around it, which is creating the context for it to happen. But we're not getting into that place where it's not going to happen. And then being together and nurturing that. So I just hope that we can do that. Start that here, maybe once a month or once a week, and even if it starts with 5 people. But let's do it. And follow this great train that you've launched here with this fossil-free train. Thank you.
I've known for some time.
Wait for the mic, wait for the mic.
I've known for some time that this isn't going to happen, but that doesn't stop me from doing the work that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the suggestion of having a positive group come together, and you should do it on the full moon, because the full moon magnifies time 100 times, positive or negative. So if you do that on the full moon, it should have quite an impact. My question, I just wanted clarification. You were saying that the burden of proof should be on the industry. Well, you can't believe the industry. Look what we went through for years and years and years with the tobacco industry. They kept saying, well, we don't, we're not doing anything that's harmful to anybody. Why not have the burden of proof on the public to present evidence like what you showed, that infrared, and just say, take it, if necessary, to the Supreme Court and get out in the streets. I mean, we did it in the 60s, and look what we accomplished. And you can accomplish it here. And I don't think this is going to get built, but like the gentleman said, I also feel the process is a learning process we have to go through. So I don't live here right now, although I'm a member of this organization, and I wish you all the best, all of you. Thank you.
Can we get, I would like to get, I would like to get Charles here to talk about Beyond Extreme Energy. Is that possible?
Thank you, Charles.
Neighbor.
Just tell us what you've been doing.
Let's see, Bill already,
Speaking to the mic?
Mike.
Bill already, gave you a pretty good introduction. I have a Stop the FERC brochure here. Any of you are welcome to come over and have a look at it. I can tell you, last year I walked with a Great March for Climate Action, and we ended after we got to DC, we had the first Beyond Extreme BXE Week of Action, starting on November 3rd last year. If you come, like you go to the it's beyondextremeenergy.org website, tells you all the information on it. I think it's May 21st to May 29th. And one thing we do, and we just did it Thursday this week, we go to the commissioners meeting and we just go and express ourselves. And, you know, with me, it's really venting out my anger. If you go to popularresistance.org, you can see what we do. And I would recommend that you would get a group of people and come and express yourselves. Because I think it's a lot more effective than sending them a message with your computer. That'll just be stored away. FERC really doesn't care about you. They're just there to enforce a corporate wish, corporate plan. Well, you know, anyway, all we can do is struggle. Going to that on the first day, going to the FERC meeting is it's a lot of fun too, to be able to just check out the video from Thursday last week at popularresistance.org. What else can I say? You don't have to get arrested. There's at DC, it's very civilized with the police. They give 3 warnings. You can block an entrance, sitting on the ground. Maybe you're chained together with other people, and the police give you 3 warnings. And usually, if you don't want to get arrested, you just get up at the second warning. So it's very civilized, and if they do arrest you, they're very nice police there. They don't make any effort to try to hurt you or anything, and it's really easy. I'm assuming if it's like last year, they just walk you around back, and they collect your information. They give you a $50 ticket. You just have to go down to one of the police stations and pay the $50 fine. So it's really easy. They don't no mug shots, no fingerprints. So that's pretty cool. Oh, and I didn't mention at the FERC meeting, you know, if you won't walk, they'll carry you out, like one cop at each end, and it's really cool. They escort you, and they're nice guys. And actually, this past week, one of the policemen congratulated one of the activists. So he told him, "Good job, good job." So, and I feel that the police support us, but they want to keep their job. What else was I going to say? Yeah, so you can yell what you want to do, and outside of the meeting room, there's a big, long, open part of the building. It takes you about 3 minutes to get you down the hall and down the escalator. If you yell really loud, they can hear you perfectly clear in the meeting. And, you know,
That powwow drum that can be heard for 3 miles.
You know, it's a really great way to make a statement. And as far as the week of action, it follows a certain plan. You get training, you get nonviolent direct action training, and you get, for a really low price, you get fed every day, good food. And we stay at the St. Peter's Church. You know, you want a good sleeping pad and maybe a really light sleeping bag or something. So it'll be a lot of fun, and I hope a few of you can make it.
This will be on the 29th.
And I want to mention that the FERC chairman actually noted a few times that it's really bugging her and the committee that all these people have interrupted the meetings, and so it's getting attention, and it appears to be getting more media attention than a lot of the other things that are going
We've
on.
got a situation here.
Right.
Maybe one more question?
I have a question. In some of my research, I saw that Dominion had given a lot of money to Governor McAuliffe's campaign, but also the Sierra Club. So how do we, are we boxed into, if somebody's got to pay more than the next guy even to get into the door? Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, what did you say, we needed a whole weekend on FERC? Or I think we could have a whole weekend on campaign finance reform. But I don't think, this is just my opinion, that I don't think that donations necessarily determine the outcome. But it sort of depends, like in the case if Dominion gave Governor McAuliffe a lot of money, what did Governor McAuliffe promise in turn? And you could say the same thing for Sierra Club or anyone else. What have they promised in return? I know I'm biased because I work for an environmental nonprofit, but it's a lot harder for us to promise things and actually have the power to deliver them, the kinds of things that would help a governor, than an energy company does. So I don't think you're boxed in, though, because part of the whole fracking fight and a lot of the discussion has been around politicians being bought and paid for. And the more you can, that's part of the documentation and exposure that we need to do. And I know Governor McAuliffe came out in favor of this, and I was on Dominion's website yesterday preparing to come down here, and I saw that they have a YouTube of him praising the ACP on their website. So, clearly they're milking that relationship, which is also why it makes it even more important for him to hear from real live constituents. And part of your criticism, it would be well within your rights as constituents to say, I object to my public officials being bought and paid for. And there are groups like Common Cause. There's a great website for Pennsylvania for exactly this issue called marcellusmoney.org. And they trace all of the contributions and point A to point B, and how did then that legislator vote on fracking legislation. So there's all sorts of ways to expose it, and it delays our friend, shame is also our friend.
Well, William, you were saying about Governor Cuomo, that for the fracking, that at one point he was against it, but he got so much pressure from people that it changed. When we were walking up the road, you were talking about something like that?
Well, he never really committed one way or the other. We all assumed he was pro-fracking because he just wouldn't take a stand. And then suddenly after the election, he found Jesus. I don't know what happened, but it's like all of a sudden we had a ban. And part of it had to do with this study that Nadia mentioned. They call it the fracking compendium of all of it's like just a collection of all the peer-reviewed studies of health impacts of various aspects of fracking. And our colleague and friend Sandra Steingraber drove to Albany and dropped it on the health commissioner's desk. And 2 weeks later, we had a ban from the health commissioner. So she had her hand up for a long time. I just wanted to.
Thanks, Heather, with Friends of Buckingham. I just wanted to invite people to take a packet from our back table. There are a group of 5 letters that you can send. There's 2 to FERC, and the rest are to legislators, Tim Kaine, Mark Warner, and to Governor McAuliffe as well. And then also tomorrow night, there is a joint meeting of the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission. And although the Board of Supervisors supported already the pipeline in the county and the compressor station, they are now sort of showing a shift. And they are looking at a current resolution that is a sea change from what they have once taken a position on. It is not a complete stance against the pipeline by any means, but they are putting up so many hurdles to it ever being built if FERC were to follow what they're asking for, that it literally would not be built. So if people in this room would take tomorrow morning and call your supervisor and express that you would like this letter to FERC and the resolution to be acted upon as is would be just fine, although we'd like a longer scoping meeting to 120 days. That would be the message that we really want to send. Now, and if you're available tomorrow at 7 o'clock to go to the meeting, that would be even better. Thank you.
I just want to quickly say that part of the role, I think, of all of us as citizens in engaging in this is sometimes to beat up on policymakers, elected officials, and sometimes to give them political cover. I thought it was interesting when Charles said the police are good guys. Sometimes some of your local officials, sometimes folks at the EPA, or even maybe at the Virginia DEQ, they want to do the right thing, but they're under so much political pressure. So you build this groundswell of support, like happened in New York. It can give them the political cover to do the right thing without ever having to admit that they're doing the right thing. And that's an important part of getting active and being out there and being really loud.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Why don't you spend the night?
Chad of Friends of Buckingham has one final announcement. Chad?
I just want to announce the next event that will be a local event, or we will be touched by this event. It's actually going to start in the fracking fields of West Virginia. It's a group of students from UVA, about 30 of them, and they have organized something called the Atlantic Coast Pipeline Resistance Ride. So, this is just another group who is working to make this change and to bring awareness to it. So they're going to be starting in West Virginia on the pre-ride tour, and then they will be going through all of the counties affected by the pipeline and amplifying their voices along the way, doing videos, doing projects, meeting with landowners, speaking to people who are directly affected by, as we are, by the compressor station and our land here. So. And then they're going to finish up the ride actually in Norfolk to amplify the coastal communities that are going to be affected by, the climate change.
Do we know when they're going to get here?
May 12th. May 12th. And you can join with them as they ride through. And we're trying to make arrangements here. Dayananda has been, for them to stay here at Yogaville overnight. They will be going right through Yogaville. So they're very excited about it. We're very excited that they're coming through. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we wish Nadia a safe travel home.
Sorry I have to leave.
And we hope to see you again, Nadia.
Thank you so much.
Well, we thank you so very much, and we wish you all the best for your service, the tremendous service you're doing for this cause.
Thank
Well,
you.
please remember, we're ever grateful to you and to your group, and that we like to keep in contact with you to work together.
Absolutely, you're doing great, and look forward to. Thank you. Same to you, and thank you, and good luck. And we'll all be in touch. And Bill gets to stay tonight.
Yeah. And thank you to Bill, and thank you both so much. So we'll close with a closing chant. Sarvesham swastir bhavatu, Sarvesham shantir bhavatu, Sarvesham purnam bhavatu, Sarvesham mangalam bhavatu. Happiness be unto all, perfect peace be unto all, fullness be unto all, prosperity be unto all. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve shantu niramaya, sarve bhadrani paschantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhavet. Happiness be unto all, perfect health be unto all. May all see good in everyone, may all be free from suffering. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. And may that light of truth overcome all darkness.
Victory to that light.
Jai Shri Sakuru Maharaj ki. Jai.